Hey, it's Gabby, and today we'll be talking about the influence of the Cold War on film then compared to its legacy today. You see movies all the time, but do you ever stop and think about what you're actually watching? It's time to actually watch movies. But first, let's rewind time to 1947. The start of the Cold War.
By this time, tension created a bipolar world where the United Soviet Socialist Republics, also known as the USSR, was competing with the United States of America in many different levels.
From an economic point of view, we can see the clash between communism, supported by the USSR, and capitalism, supported by the US. Politically, there was a conflict between a dictatorship and a liberal democracy. The conflicts were inevitable, as both countries denied each other's legitimacy. This led to space race, nuclear arms race, proxy wars, and the expansion of sphere of influence. The Cold War lasted until 1989, the fall of Berlin Wall, but we can still see the influence of these times on modern media.
The emergence of the Cold War provoked a new era of propaganda which to the US was an effective tool for controlling the public ideas, on the USSR as well as itself. Productions of politically based movies, documentaries, and television series created an atmosphere of nationalism for the US and fear towards Russia. As this graph indicates, the amount of movies related to conspiracy and disaster drastically increased during the period of the Cold War. The US government intentionally encouraged Hollywood films that primarily focused on demonstrating the negative aspects of Soviet societies, known as the Red Scare.
The House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC, was one of the many institutions created by the US government to investigate people and companies with suspected communist ties. And it was in film from the 1930s where Hollywood became the hotbed of communist activities and continued until the 60s. But the main moment of censorship was in October 1947 with the case of the Hollywood 10. In this trial, the HUAC went after 10 Hollywood members who allegedly had communist ties. This contributed to the anti-communist crackdown of the 40s and shows how the US extended its influence by limiting freedom of expression. And this is also because their nation's security depended on preventing the spread of communism.
Hello everyone, my name is Tui, and today we're going to do some case study on Romania. Well, while Americans and Soviets were displaying biased media in their countries, impacts of US film extended to Romania as well, which is geographically close to USSR. Through the presence of American cinema in Romania, we can observe the clash of ideologies. 1945 was the start of communist Romania, which was also the beginning of political press on American impacts in Romania. According to historical documents, the Bucharest of the 1930s had in total of 36 cinema theaters and summer gardens that were showing movies. So it was really a big part of people's life in Romania. Instead of denying American films, the Romanian communist regime, interested in displaying an open image of a democratic country abroad, initially accepted US films. Nevertheless, situations drastically changed after the signatory of the Peace Treaty, or the Treaty of Bucharest.
Published on the first page of all newspapers, it stated, "The democratic regime aims to put the motion pictures in service of the people, to contribute to their education of the large masses. This end can be reached by showing films with a high ethical, cultural, and artistic level. Fulfillment of this end will only be possible when the motion pictures will be put into the hands of the people, when the motion pictures will be controlled and planned by the state."
People turned their attention to American films, although the Romanian government did not allow them to do so. The conflicts between the Romanian communist government and American films did not stop until the fall of the Soviet Union.
I hereby turn over to ISM Incorporated everything I have, including my freedom and the freedom of my children and my children's children, in return for which said ISM promises to take care of me forever. Including my freedom. Freedom? Well, sign away my freedom. Why, this is ridiculous. Don't be corny, brother. Sure, our system of free enterprise isn't perfect. But before we throw it away for some imported double... Just a sample of the things the capitalistic system has given us in only 160 years. Before signing up, you boys ought to try a little taste of Dr. Ism's formula to see what you'd get in exchange for your freedom. Go ahead, try it. You can't do this to me! I'll strike! The state forbids strikes.
This anti-communist propaganda seeks to influence the way society sees the enemy. It narrates the story of American businessmen who are falling into Dr. Utopia's communist product. These businessmen, desperate to buy the product, the ism drink, is that they travel to a communist world in which their most important value, freedom, disappears. Unlike in the capitalist government, where each individual is in control of their own wealth, here the state is in control of everything. All throughout the film, the director highlights the positive aspects of a capitalist state along with the negatives of a communist government. This strategy influences society by creating a greater hate towards the Soviets' communist ideal, believing that there is no better than the American way.
The second movie we'll study is The Red Menace, your typical Red Scare film. And starting by its title, we can only deduce that it's a direct type of political propaganda. Released by the Republic in 1949, this Robert Springsteen movie starts with a suspenseful and perhaps scary music, portraying the USSR as a threat represented as a manipulative octopus. Its long tentacles reference Russia's growing sphere of influences, as if spreading the poison of communism to underline one fact, that Soviet Union could do no good. The plot itself tells the story of a US veteran, Bill Jones, who didn't receive help from the government after being cheated by a real estate company. This, of course, makes him an easy target for the American Communist Party, which tries to lure him in with its dirty and blunt propaganda. This encourages Jones to join, a decision he regrets after the cell scene.
There's only one kind of truth. That is the Communist Party truth as seen by Marx, Lenin, and Stalin. We'll have our way if it means bloodshed and terror.
The principal lack of freedom of expression attributed to the communists is shown when a man is given an unfair death penalty when voicing an opinion. Here we can see the influence of the Cold War on film, as the movie tries to prove USSR will do anything to get people on their side and that murder won't stop them to uphold whatever reputation they want to show. It aims not only to glorify the US's liberal democracy, but to do that by portraying Russian people as if they all thought like the Kremlin.
The film The Front was released in 1976. The movie is about Howard Prince, a cashier who is dissatisfied with politics in America. One day, Alfred Miller, a blacklisted screenwriter, asks the cashier if he would sell one of his scripts under his names, to which Howard agrees, thinking he'll gain both wealth and fame. As time proceeds, Prince begins working with other blacklisted writers, publishing the scripts under the name of Howard Prince, becoming a front for them. The film tries to influence the American society to believe that the capitalist government is the best, since it allows you to do what you desire for your own good instead of the common one.
Fairy tales can come true.
It also seeks to highlight the role of the individual and how in this case Howard Prince is able to stand out and make a change, something that would be impossible to happen in a communist world where everything is under the control of the state.
The last movie we'll analyze is Madagascar 3, released in 2012 by DreamWorks. In this movie, the iconic characters join a traveling circus to try to get back to New York. However, the circus animals Vitali, Gabi, and Stefano are not keen on letting American strangers join. Vitali, the Russian tiger, is shown as old-fashioned and uncongenial. The Russian character as the unlikable one, this movie creates an impression of Russians as unpleasant and uncivil. This is a scene where Alex, the nice guy, is trying to convince the leaders of allowing them on their train. Gabby and Stefan are easily convinced, yet it is Vitaly who throws knives at the protagonist and refuses to accept them into the circus. In another scene, the penguin leader says, "I never thought I'd say this on American soil, but the Brewski's right." Brewski being slang for Russian, clearly referring to past conflicts between America and Russia. Because of the Cold War, Hollywood continuously shows Russians with heavy accents and disagreeable personalities. This is just another modern movie fulfilling the Russian stereotype, as Russians always have to be shown as the mean ones, the fixed, hard-headed people. Also in the movie, Alex Line is the most popular one, the praised crowd pleaser, the king of the jungle. There's a reason why the filmmakers chose to make the protagonist an American lion. If it were any other animal or nationality, the movie wouldn't have as much success, because the American people want to see American characters.
As the clips show, modern media as well as motion pictures from the past were and are still influenced by the fear and the nationalism that overtook the Cold War. The reason these stereotypes are still present in Hollywood films can be traced back to self-interest. American people want to see American actors succeed. The more people see their own country prevail, persist, and surpass expectations, the more money they spend on nationalist propaganda. As historical evidences suggest, U.S. cinema played a significant role during the Cold War. It was inevitable for a government to not use media to deliver political messages and national interest. As means of controlling public opinions and societal consensus, the U.S. government promoted productions of politically subjective films. American cinemas thus became an important and a widespread source of U.S. ideologies. Comparing movies from that period to nowadays, it is still somewhat traceable that offensive and stereotypical ideas towards Russia and former USSR nations exist in modern cinematics. Despite the fall of the USSR and endings of the massive cinema propaganda, ideas are still rooted into the American culture. Although the Cold War had ended long ago, the ideological conflicts between the US and Russia have just begun.